6 days in Fallujah is probably the last possible game, if you'd asked me this time last week, that I would have guessed we would be starting this new segment with. Remember that?
No.
It's a Biden, man. The Joe Biden power. He just brought us back to 10 years
That's
ago.
right. Right back to 2009 again.
Turn the clock back.
That's right. Just Obama years all over again. Yeah, if you... Yes? Go on.
No. I mean, we could talk for hours about the Obama years, but let's not.
Seemed like that facial expression was about to translate into something. Yeah, I mean, if you don't remember, 6 Days in Fallujah was a roughly 2009 era kind of modern day military shooter based on the infamous battle during the Second Iraq War that got canceled by Konami at the last minute. I don't know how much of it actually got made originally. But
I don't know if it was quite last minute, but they had started promoting it, and of course people were like, "Wait,
4 days."
Yeah, they were at the day 4, and they got to the point where they're like, "All right, this is the white phosphorus part." And they're like, "Wait, what? Hang on!" And then they stopped.
Well, don't worry, they're not touching on that anymore, so it'll be fine.
Fuck, dude, this is like
weird.
This everything about this sounds like it came from way earlier than even 2009. This game coming back and these new interviews.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah.
So this is the former CEO of Atomic Games, which was the studio that originally was working on the game. And I think after Konami dropped it, they tried shopping the game around. I think there was a time there where they were like really stuck to this idea that they were just like, no, we gotta tell this story. And it was a different time, 2009, from what people were expecting from games, I think. But even then, they were still not able to find a publisher who would touch it.
I mean, Call of Duty 4 came out 2007, I think it was, and like that was pretty much the beginning of the modern wave of modern military, kind of set in the Middle East style military shooters. Like, Modern Warfare 2 was like only a year after this fiasco that we're talking about. Like, that was a bit later.
13 and 12 or something. Yeah.
The point is, though, we were like right in the middle of the heyday of this exact style of game, and even in that context, in that atmosphere, this game could not survive the public backlash.
Spec Ops Line was 2012, and for some reason this game always reminds me of Full Spectrum Warrior in some way, which was 04, different type of game, not that type of like modern first person shooter type thing, obviously.
Do you remember the Medal of Honor remake or refresh, I guess? Because that was based on a real thing too, right?
At one I don't remember. I mean, all I know is at one point there was like direct references to the Taliban, and they at some point changed the it was one of those things where they went in late and changed all the multiplayer stuff to just say Op 4 instead of any kind of specific enemy forces, so that they couldn't have like news stories saying like a game lets you play as the Taliban and kill American troops and like all this other stuff. They kind of went like, oh fuck no, and backed away from that. And
that was
Medal of Honor.
That was the Tier 1 Beards game, correct?
Yes, that was the beard.
Yes.
That was the beard game. That was the game where the guy that was the lead of it did that Tom McShay confrontation at E3 or whatever, where he went up and put the bullet on the fucking table.
What?
Yeah. He did an interview with him as well after that, right? They did like a...
Yes, that was like part of the interview, I think, was like we're taking this very seriously, but we want you to understand just how faithful, or whatever it was. It was just like this ridiculous, like, dude, what do you like? Okay, I get it. You grew the beard just like they did, but like, come on. Yeah, Medal of Honor. Yes, that was a. And then at the end of the day, Medal of Honor was just like, check it out. We wanted to find a way to like chip away at Call of Duty's success because Battlefield wasn't quite doing it. So we wanted to skew more in that direction.
Yes, that is all that was. So yeah, like you said, there does appear to be some kind of through line from the original incarnation of this game to now. Atomic Games was the developer of the original version, and the CEO of that company has now started Victura, which I'm not quite clear on the arrangement here, but that is basically the company behind this revival of the game, although they are not the developer. That is Highwire Games, which is Marty O'Donnell's studio, the Bungie composer.
Yeah, and they did Golem, right?
Golem. They did Golem, the PlayStation VR game, was their first game, and now they're doing this.
I'd wondered what Highwire was working on. Golem was originally supposed to be like PSVR launch, and then kind of got pushed past that, and
significantly past. Yeah.
So yeah, this Victura. So it sounds like they, that Peter Tamty, the head of that publisher, has been, I guess, like pushing, like it sounds like that it's been something that he's wanted to make since then, and kind of never gave up on it, and is now back with Highwire doing the dev work to try to make this thing a reality, and it's bizarre. I think that this is just, it feels like someone got stuck on an idea that wasn't that great to begin with.
Yeah. And
like felt out of step with like times then. And as the years have gone on, you look at it and just go like, I don't like this. The interviews he's been giving, Games Industry Biz has one. Polygon was the big one that everyone's been talking about, where he is giving the classic game developer line of like, we don't, like they don't want the game to be a political message.
Yeah, man, he's really running the gamut.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're literally trying to talk like, this is a conflict where, oh God, I don't even know where to begin. On this.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, there are things we can say about it. I mean, some facts that he gave about the game, he is saying that it's going to be roughly 90% from the perspective of American soldiers involved in what was like a very fraught urban combat situation. The other 10%, like it's kind of, on some level, it's even weird to break this down into numerical percentages, but the other 10% will be from the perspective of an Iraqi civilian trying to get his family out of the city. They stressed that there would not be any kind of insurgent perspectives represented, but I don't know. I don't even know, like you said, I don't even know where to start with what is the major point of contention here, because there are so many.
Yeah. I think these interviews, like, he just comes across as like it's hard to tell. Like, is he seriously that oblivious, or is he actually that nefarious to try to make this the way that they seem to be trying to make it? Where it's like, like they're asking him about white phosphorus, which it was alleged that U.S. military used white phosphorus in this conflict, and the Polygon story says, like, again, Tamty isn't interested in litigating what constitutes a war crime.
Yeah,
and the quote here is, "There are things that divide us, including those really divisive things. I think distracts people from the human stories we can all identify with. I have two concerns with including phosphorus as a weapon. Number one is that it's not part of the stories that these guys told us, so I don't have an authentic factual basis on which to tell that. That's most important. Number two is I don't want sensational types of things to distract from the parts of that experience." And so, like,
what could possibly be sensational about that particular moment in time?
Yeah, right. And so it's this very bizarre, like, I think a lot of the quotes kind of fall into that category of just like, hey, yes, this conflict is a mess, and there's a lot of stuff happening here that if you really told that story, you would be potentially illustrating war crimes, perpetrated by United States troops. And he's like, yeah, but that gets in the way of the human story. Like he's trying to root this game in a real world conflict. But no, and at this point, no one's talking about this anymore. This kind of came and went, like drudging this back up now to like bring the what happened in Fallujah back up to bubble around here, while also being like, yeah, but we don't want to engage with any of that because we're just trying to tell these stories, these very human stories. Like, you could tell those human stories against the backdrop of literally any other conflict, like imagined or otherwise, and still get that point across. Like, it doesn't have to be set in Fallujah. Like, you could very easily make your fucking like generic military shooter with like, we want to tell these stories. He's not the first person to come along and say that exact thing about a military shooter. And there's just no reason to try to set this against the backdrop of that conflict. And so like at some point you're like, did you just keep the name because you knew it would get you any kind of buzz that fucking like, what else are you going to call it? Like Noble Spear Operation Rogue Legacy, whatever the fuck string of military words you're going to slap together. And so like the amount of just like song and dance he does by like, oh, again, we're really not trying to engage with any of this controversy. Like, you called the game this, you're trying to set it in this conflict. You're trying to ground it in some kind of reality. Like you did this to yourself, man. And he keeps giving these interviews that you're just like, I don't know. It's just, it's bizarre. And then you get into some other stuff where he has been part of a company that has worked on training simulators for the military, and then has to say like, well, the government didn't know about this game ahead of time. They didn't find out until we announced it. And, they're not funding the game, all this other stuff. And you just go like, you have muddied the water in so many different directions that you just like, he just comes off like a clown. Like, every developer, plenty of, Ubisoft says it every 6 months, right? They get out there and say like, oh, we're not trying to really say anything political with our game about hacking and fighting against a PMC that's overtaken London. We're not trying to say anything political. But like, everyone does that. Everyone has done that. They'll continue to do it. But he is like taking it to some like insane next level here, where he is trying to have it both ways. And it's just this, like, it's so out of step with reality of right now. You just like, did this guy just like go live in a hole for the last 10 years and not follow anything that happened with video games? And now he's just like, well, we're gonna come back out and tell this story. It's got a real 15 years ago kind of vibe to it, 12 years ago kind of vibe to it, 09, whatever.
He reeks of one of those executives that never gets told no. Like he's on a mission to do this. Like, clearly he has skin in the game in some way. Like, he's passionate about the experiences of the people they've interviewed or something. But it's like, who is calling for this? Who wants this? Like, like in the world of the internet, who's even going in 2021? Who's going to bat for this game? Like, who wants this? It's so strange. I don't, like you said, it's taken the whole keep politics out of games to a sort of a post-parody level that it's even hard to talk about it. It's even difficult to want to talk about it because it's so ridiculous and in bad taste. Yeah.
It just makes me understand, like, not able to understand what they're even going for here, because like, I guess there, I don't know that I would think that this is a good idea, but like, there's a way to do this game and tell this story and say like, hey, this was a fucked up scenario. We're going to try to be as true to it as possible. But here he is, day one, as they're re-announcing the game, like part and parcel going like, nah, we're not going to touch any of that stuff.
We're not going to,
we're the way of the story we're trying to tell.
Yes. We're not going to explore any of the questions about how justifiable the conflict was in the first place. We're just,
yeah, that would just bog down the human story we're trying to tell. Like, I think, again, you could root those human stories could take place on fucking Mars just as well, right? Those human stories could take place against the backdrop of any generic made up conflict. Call of Duty has been doing it in different ways for years that brush up against reality, but get far enough away from it that you can at least go like, I guess war movies do this all the time. And he tries to invoke that and saying like, well, television and movies get to evoke the Iraq war. And I think that, really people just don't like that war, I guess. Like, no, there's some specific stuff to this 6 days that might be a little fucking different than the whole conflict. But it's, man, holy shit. It's again, it's just, it is so far removed. Like just reading these quotes from multiple interviews and looking at this stuff, it's just so far removed from like reality. You just look at it and go like, this is like some kind of hilarious joke. Or like at the other end of it, you're just like, or you're like acting in bad faith and you're like deliberately trying to not engage with this stuff for some other reason. And then you get into conspiracy territory, which I don't know that whatever. I don't know what to think about that. But like, it just seems like such a profoundly bad idea. Like I feel bad for Highwire. Like that's a talented veteran team in a lot of places, but now they're making a game that feels like it's the sequel to Blackwater. It's like, we took the Kinect support out of Blackwater and now you can play it. Like it's just, what the fucking fuck? How did anyone die? Yeah, maybe you're right. He's just not used to hearing someone say no, but holy shit, no, don't fucking do this. It's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the one new wrinkle about this since 2009, I mean, not that making the game itself is any more advisable now than it was then, but like the thing that's changed now is that, like, as far as I can tell, the Iraq War in general has never been less popular with the entirety of the American public, you know? Like, at least at that time, well, you know, like, most of the people that were engaged in, like, kind of the Bush era, like, rah-rah jingoism of that time have just spent the last 5 years largely pivoting to like isolationism, and even they think that the Iraq War was a bad idea now. You know, it's like we're not living in that shadow of 9/11 anymore, where a huge chunk of the public was like thirsty for this kind of thing. You know, like
and
now,
I think like
everybody has come around to the reality that this was fucked. Like I don't know why did they think this is somehow now the time to do this.
Yeah, and there's something insidious specifically about the time distance as well. Whereas, like, you know, you can make a piece of art around something that's happened recently while you're sort of caught up in it in a certain way, or there's a snapshot that is relevant to when it is taken. But there's something like very sickly about the sort of historical whitewashing that this does when you are that selective about the story you want to tell about something which, you know, the American public has largely probably forgotten about, but for the, you know, like the Iraq War, but like people in parts of the world where these imperialist wars were fought are still feeling it to this day, to then sort of be like, we want to tell this story about it. It's like, and to be in that position of power. So it's almost worse given the time, because you've had time to think about it and for it to sort of settle. Which I think is why people are sort of mostly shocked by it. Angered, of course, but just taken aback that this is something that anyone would want to make in this fashion.
It doesn't make sense. Like I don't see what the goal is here. It's, and you know, and I think, you know, there's people in the chat are saying like, oh well, army recruiting is at an all-time low. This isn't gonna, you know, like this isn't going to do it. Like if anything, you're bringing up this stuff that, you know, hey, you Google Fallujah, you know, you're not finding stuff that's just like, let's get in there and whoop some ass. But, you know, you're finding all of that stuff and going like, holy shit. I'm like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been over there in the first place. Hang on. So this doesn't seem like something that is just going to fucking help on that front either. It like, even as a piece of propaganda, like who's out there talking about Fallujah enough to where they would go like, we got to put out a video game that's going to help bury the bad stuff. Like it's done. It's in the past enough. People are still pissed about it, but not in a way that like, we've got to act on this information. They're not trying to prosecute anyone. You know, they're not like, right. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see like, if you were trying to like actively change the way people thought about this conflict, like to what end? Like, what does that actually accomplish? Right?
Yeah. Who's this for? Who's it for?
Yeah.
Like even who's it for?
Nobody is asking for this.
Yeah. It's wild.
Even if you were trying to like really actually, let's go all the way on the other side of it. Like, let's say this was, hey, the U.S. government is like the Department of Defense is trying to make this happen, or hey, we want to get recruitment up or something like this. Like, this doesn't seem like the way to accomplish that either.
Mm-mm. No, you've got your commercials on UFC fights and you know, probably in Call of Duty there's some sort of stuff. I don't know. That seems like
called
maybe
Call of
more
Duty.
Effectively. It's just Call of Duty. Yeah. America's Army is now Call of Duty. Yeah,
it's just bizarre, man.
Dude, does this game come out?
I was looking for some indication of like where the money is coming from, like who is funding this, but I don't think that information is really out there. So I don't know.
It's early too. Like this could be them getting out there to try and get that money.
Yeah, like I mean, this Polygon story has a couple of what look like either screenshots or maybe sort of cinematic mock-ups of what the game might look like. And it's not clear. But yeah, I don't think there's much of a game to show yet.
They're saying it'll be out this year. So there's got to be something to it. But like, yeah, some of these quotes are just like from, again, Peter Tamte, who's the head of the publisher here. Here's another one from the Polygon interview. And the only thing I fear is that fundamentally, when we cut through everything, people's objection here to 6 Days of Fallujah is more of an objection to the Iraq War. We've made games about other wars and real stories from other wars that have not gotten the attention and have not gotten any sort of controversy. So fundamentally, people's objection is to the Iraq War. I don't think we should be a proxy for that particular battle.
You can't escape that. Like
you've invited that. Like you've opened the can. They have done this. Wow. Again. Like you could have called this anything else and told the same stories against a lot of other backdrops, and I think accomplished those goals. You know, when he talks about, you know, the like, oh, we heard these stories and wanted to tell this, but like, no, now you're basing something on stories, but like almost deliberately going out of your way to not get the full picture, seemingly, with some of these answers where he's like, oh, well, we didn't hear that in our stories, so we're not going to include that. Or like, I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love to talk about different aspects of that conflict, assuming they're still alive.
Yes.
It's a real mess. It's like baffling. Like I was reading all this stuff yesterday and just like shaking my head, just going like, why the fuck would anyone do this?
Yes, this ship sailed in 2009, and you should have just let it go. And like that, and again, like you said, that's the best explanation I can come up with, is that this guy has just been so married to or invested in this idea for this long, like he can't let it go. I don't know what other reason you would have for dredging this up at this particular time. Like it's just, baffling.
Right. Yeah. Weird.
At any rate, I guess we'll stay tuned and see if it comes out. Sounds like they're trucking along.